Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show. We're going to get started in just a few minutes, and we're going to bring on Rav Mike Feuer. We're going to have a lot of fun. We got politics to talk about. We got a Torah portion to talk about. We got Pharaoh, Amalek. We got clouds. What do you call pillar of cloud, pillar of fire, or pillar of cloud and fire. We got a lot of stuff. Oh, and we got the holy manna bread, which is coming down from heaven. So we got a great show coming up for you, and all I want you to do is get on with me right now. Join me on the program. I'm having a cup of coffee with some delicious rice milk, and we'll get started. When I hear from you guys, and I want to see a comment from anybody, including all of my good friends out there, to let me know if the sound is good, and also when I bring on Rav Mike, if you can tell me if the relative sound is good between the two of us. You can see the background. It's the Egyptians having a hard time inside that Red Sea. They're having a hard time. There's Malka Fleischer joining me. I can't believe this. Wait, there's Malka Fleischer. She says hi. That is so great. Malka Fleischer, I'm her biggest fan. I guess she's a fan as well. And her and I are actually going to be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Israel time doing an awesome Tu B'Shvat Seder live right from this studio right here. So join us tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Israel time, wherever that is for you. If you don't know the answer of what 9 p.m. Israel time is for you, look it up, because I'm not going to do all the work for you, but I will hopefully provide a delicious virtual, we call it Zoom Bishvat. Zoom Bishvat will be happening tomorrow night right here. And Malka Fleischer says, it's fun to be a listener today. Thank you, Malka. And a lot of other people are saying hi. And right now, this is a great opportunity for me to bring Rav Mike on to the program. What I meant to say. There it is.
I was taking over.
Shalom, Rav Mike Feuer. Let's do a little sound check.
Sound check. What should I say? Something interesting, witty, perhaps even hilarious? You got me good?
That sounds perfect. Malka, if you could tell me how relative sound sounds, and that's really great. And Malka says that for tomorrow night, get your fruits ready we're going to be doing a virtual a Zoom Bishvat, okay, Seder. But it's not going to be, the tricky thing is it's not going to be. All right, you saying Malka says more volume on my end as usual. You're always you have a lot of volume, Rav Mike. You know that? You have a lot of volume usually.
I'm skeptical. I think that your wife is on your side. I want an impartial judge.
My side is good sound for both of us, so that's my side. Okay. I just want to also mention my good friend Johan Biju George, who is rocking the Twitter and rocking the friendship, and he's doing great. Thank you so much. And hold on one second, one more little sound thing, Rav Mike, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. One of the things that I've been complaining about is in this modern medium, it's very hard to know what the relative sounds are. I even wrote to the people who make this program, and I said to them, can you please, help me find out what the relative volume is vis-a-vis me and my guest? But they have not told me the answer to that yet. So we haven't figured it out. I think we got it right, Rav Mike, and I think we shall begin. If anybody else has any issues, let me know. Fred says shalom. He says hello. Fred Bettman. Anna says good sound, or sound is good. Who else we got over here? We got Ellie says good morning. Good morning to you, and good morning to everybody. Let's just start the show. Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live from Judea to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. Shalom, and welcome to our studios in the land of Israel. And we are joined by our beloved Rabbi Mike Feuer, Rav Mike, who's rocking it with us for the Torah portion, the politics, and the feelings of, I guess, broadcasting the reality and the blessings of the Holy Land. Rav Mike, shalom, and welcome. Tell me how you doing.
Shalom. Well, with an introduction like that, I'm not really sure. I mean, broadcasting reality, it's a big task, but yeah, thank God, happy to be here.
It's interesting you say that. It's interesting you say that. I just want to pause on one thing, which is, I've said this on other shows, and I've been really trying to practice this. I'm really feeling that we're dealing in a time where one of the most expensive commodities, because of its rarity, is truth. And I have asked my friends.
By expensive, you mean precious then?
Precious and rare, but
because expensive makes me a little edgy. But okay, I'll let it go.
Okay, what I mean by expensive is
truth is not for sale. But I hear it. It was precious and rare. Precious.
And you know what I meant? I meant to say valuable. That's what I meant.
Precious.
Valuable. Yeah, precious. That's right. And My good friend Mark says hello. Mark Pickles, great article in the Times of Israel. Mark, great job to you. The thing about truth right now is that it's a very rare commodity and therefore precious. And what I've asked my listeners and I've asked of myself recently to do is to really be very, very careful to speak only truth. Like this is a Kutzker type thing, right? Like to really speak only truth. And what I mean by that is even if you heard something, you say things like, well, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard from this kind of source like this. What do you think of that? As opposed to saying with clarity, oh, the vaccine is dangerous or something like that. Just to be very careful and cautious not to throw out there untruths. To really speak it, because we need right now, and I think everybody will respect so much right now if we all just commit to being like, no, we're people of truth, not people of throwing around opinions and masquerading as truth. Just to speak kind of with clarity for one another and create a different atmosphere. What do you think about that?
Well, at the risk of Xing us both out of a job, I think actually the world would be served by a lot more quiet. Meaning, like that's what came up for me when you said speak only truth. I'm thinking, wow, then 98% of what's said today just goes away. Mm-hmm. And I do appreciate the sort of perspective you gave to what you meant in terms of a certain humility and lack of certainty. It's interesting to me to hear you say that because in the past we've spoken about how certainty is a almost a feared and derided quality in discourse today, right? Because if you're certain about something, you must be a fanatic.
Right.
Now I hear you both calling for greater certainty, speak only truth, and yet practically speaking inviting people to be humble and even a little bit hesitant about their assertions.
Right.
I want to add one more thing, which is I think that truth isn't just precious today. I think truth is feared. Mm-hmm, I think that we have to appreciate that there's a lot of manipulation of the very real problems that postmodern consciousness poses to knowing truth. Very real problems. But there's a lot of manipulation of it to hide and avoid.
Last week, I want to riff back at you was something that you said last week, which is you said that saying that you have truth is in postmodern language a type of violence. And just to speak that out to people, it just means like, oh, you think you have the truth? That means that you're a fascist, fanatic, controlling, toxic masculinity, mansplaining, whatever these type of words that basically say like that. Oh, you've got this truth that you're like putting on me. You think you have the right. It's come to be understood as a type of violence in our modern society. You said that last week. I've been thinking about that all week. And
by the way, it's not an undeserved fear. Let's remember that modernity, the hallmark of modernity, was the certainty that led, sort of mass movements to slaughter people. Like, and in the medieval experience with the religious truth is the same as well. But I sometimes feel at the risk of coming across like a racist, like it's like a Goyish and Narishkeit around truth, like that level of like the madness. Like, okay, we get like absolute certainty is definitely idolatry because there's only one thing that's certain. But the power of the Torah, which Kodesh Baruch Hu gave to us, is that it was given as an absolute truth knowingly to subjective creatures. Mm-hmm. Right? Like that's part of the manifestation of Torah in the world, is that we are subjective creatures. It doesn't change its truth. It changes our relationship to it.
Also, not being able to articulate what you would perceive as truth is also a kind of violence the other way. Meaning to say postmodern disaffection of like your personal truth. Okay, let's say you have your own truth and I have my own truth, but that doesn't mean I don't have my own truth. Don't invade my life and my truth and my society's truth, my historical truth. I have my identity, as Yehuda Cohen taught me to say. I self-identify as, and that's powerful. Meaning to say, that doesn't mean there's no truth. It means you don't have to respect my truth, but people do respect it when you speak truth. They want to hear in a truthless world. They want to hear somebody with truth, certainly, or at least somebody that perceives themselves as having truth. Certainly, we are very lucky. I want to give you an example today. I'm going to admit to everybody here that I indeed went today and got the first of the vaccine inoculation shots. I got one today. I barely even felt it, but and you know what I got
mine right before the show last week. Actually, I remember.
I didn't. By the way, I didn't take a photo and a selfie of myself doing it.
I mean,
I think you know why? For one very selfish reason. I think everybody looks ridiculous in those pictures, so I wasn't going to subject myself to exactly to that.
I'm
That's
not
exactly right.
technologically equipped to do such a thing, so it wasn't
Yeah.
really even a
Oh,
temptation.
I could have done it, but I didn't. I really didn't want to do it. But one thing I actually did experience a feeling of truth today. It was semi surreal. I walked in. I thought it was going to be like a quick line. It was a quick line, but there were a lot of people waiting, like my fellow townsmen and women from
Just
the town I
lining
live
up.
in here.
Yep.
They were more than lined up. They were sitting comfortably in a hall.
But I mean, I meant like they're pushing us through, man. We're all getting it.
Right. I'm sitting in this room and I see all this room of like my countrymen, my townsmen and women, my co-religionists, most men with a kippah on their head, which really just means today when you wear a kippah, it means like, yeah, I believe there's a God and I believe that there's a Torah. And I'm in this room with all these strangers, but they're not total strangers. Some people I know, some people I don't. And I got this feeling like I'm with my nation. We have our truth. Our truth is meshing with the world of modernity and science as much as it can. We're strong. We have a language. We have a Torah that we share, a godly Torah. And here we are in Judea in a nice modern facility, getting this ultra modern vaccine. Let's not get into if it's good or bad. And I felt this embrace, and I just turned to my beloved Malka and I said to her, darn it, Israel's the best place in the world. There's just no other place I'd rather be, especially in comparison. And this is what I wanted to touch with you on, Rav Mike, with what I feel about America today, which I feel like the way I'm perceiving it from my lens from out here is that there's like not as much binding these people together as was when I was a kid. The underlying structures of the thing, let's say freedom, which was a big American value, freedom of speech, which was an important value. Like those things seem to me to be at least, if not undermined, at least polarized and not brought together under anything. And just kind of like, you're more of an autonomous individual there. And maybe even more since if the American dream has been broken down, then the American individualism becomes hyper sensitized, and that's what you got. You just got individualism, lonely individualism.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many angles on that. First of all, you have to remember that Israel, as you yourself say all the time, is an ethnic nation state as opposed to the civic nation state model of America. When you, like you said, there's a tribal element that bonds us together. There's an ethnos here. We have, of course, others. There are minority populations, etc. But it's very different in that respect. Also, caveat is that the American social fabric has had major rifts in it since its foundation. It's one of the things is that that bill is coming due right now. You look at pictures of America 50, 60 years ago, and there was a black-white divide where you could go to the water fountain and where you could sit on a bus, But I think most importantly, and this is the piece that we as Israelis, as well as Jews, but Israelis should take to heart, is that democratic states are founded on two fundamental principles, which is the respect of individual rights and some perception of common goods. I mean, it's always a balance between how we define common goods and where the boundaries between individual rights and common goods are. What's broken down in America is any real sense of a common good. And so therefore, it's not surprising to me that the hyper-individualism that you're speaking about finds its expressions in various ways. So the left is like, I as an individual can define my gender, my identity, my etc. The right is moving toward I as an individual don't tell me what to do, and I don't have to wear a mask, and I can carry guns. And obviously those are gross stereotypes in both directions. But you understand that fundamentally they're expressive of the same problem, is that barring any common good for which I'm willing to curtail my individual rights. So why would I ever do individual right? Why would I ever put any boundary on it? And that's a recipe for dissolution. And like I said before, my only hope right now is that there's a peaceful dissolution, because I actually don't see the permanence of the union being what will bring health and well-being to the hundreds of millions of people in that immediate subcontinent, much less to the globe where we all are in the same boat on some level. Oh, you're mute. Can't hear you.
Yeah, that was a little button of mine.
I want a button.
What you just said is, how do I say this the right way? Because I wanna be living in my time, but also transcending my own time. You know, the way that the world has been in our lifetimes, and for some years forward, is America is it's the superpower, and it's also the cultural superpower, and we're seeing it's leading less. Its influence is waning on one level or another. And on the one hand, as a Jewish person and as a Zionist, I say to myself, okay, Leom Yamatz, the Jewish influence, the Jerusalem influence is rising, and therefore it has to be that Rome has to wane. That's just the math of it. That's just the kind of hardwired math of the system. And on the other hand, just as a person that has to live with economics, technology, and regional powers and regional security thinking, you have to understand that you kind of have to accept that we're probably going to go into an era of less stability for a while until the powers realign. And there are definitely here in our region, there are powers that are vying for regional control, regional strength. I think the two big powers that we see here are really playing hard is Turkey and Iran. And those are two ancient, I like to think of them as a kind of reinvented, a very ancient power.
Oh yeah. No. Iran much, by the way. Iran much older
than the Turks, but the area of
the
Turks.
They give us a run for our money.
Right. But the area of the Turks is like the old Hittite power. There's something very ancient in these peoples and in this way. Maybe the peoples themselves switched out, but that Turkish power is an old power. Which PS controlled this region for 400 years.
Oh yeah.
Which
sometimes
is
with an iron hand.
Right. So they're vying for Israel, not yet vying for power per se.
Which is a mistake right now.
It might be a mistake. It might be a mistake. By the way, just can I give you a little parenthetical thing? I know your other show on on the Land of Israel Network is the Jewish Story, which is found at jewishstory.co or at ravmike.com. You've talked a lot about old modern Israeli history. One of the things that I've recently come across that I didn't understand was that in the Sinai Accords, in which after the 6-Day War, Israel conquered the Sinai for I think the second or maybe even third time in its history, and then after the Yom Kippur War, a few years later, went into the Sinai Accords. And finally gave away the Sinai to Egypt. So I was looking at the map of Sinai, and I'm looking down at the Straits of Tiran, which were famously closed by Nasser, that precipitated the war, the 6-Day War, right?
Sure.
I'm looking at the Straits of Tiran, which is the entrance into the Gulf of Aqaba, which is like after north of the Red Sea, it splits into two: Gulf of Suez, Gulf of Aqaba. The Gulf of Aqaba is the one that's next to the Sinai on the east side, and also it hits our port city of Eilat, right? So at the very bottom of this little opening called the Straits of Tiran, I noticed that there was these two little islands.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So the big island, which is a tiny island, but the bigger one is called Tiran Island.
Yeah, Tiran, and the other one is.
And the other one's called something else, but it's like mamash like a sand spit. It's almost nothing. It's like nothing. But in any case, I'm like, wait a minute. And I called my mom, and then I verified it with some other people. I'm like, and then I looked it up in Wikipedia. I was like, did we hold Tiran Island? Did Israel control Tiran Island? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, so during the Sinai Accords, they gave away Tiran Island? And people were like, yes. I'm like, do you mean to tell me that we didn't hold on to this one tiny island at the very mouth of the place that was shut by our enemies? In negotiations, we couldn't have said, hey, you want the Sinai back? my opinion, it was a bad idea. But okay, you want to have it back. But we need this military control of this tiny little island so that we could patrol the whole Straits of Aqaba, the whole Gulf of Aqaba, and have a naval base on this little island so that it will never happen again, as in never again. And I was shocked that it was indeed given away, this little island to Egypt.
I hear it, but I think it's a misreading of the nature of warfare, especially naval warfare at that stage. I don't think that rock was going to make the difference. Meaning, the idea of blockading, even by 78, the idea of blockading the Straits of Tiran, whether we held that peace or not, was a different question. I mean, you're into an era of naval warfare, of missile-based naval warfare, and the level of air power that Israel wields, and the depth of American presence, which is really what everything hinged on in the end of the day in the Sinai Accords. You put all those American observers, hundreds, in the heart of the Sinai, etc. That's what it all hinged on. It was all. So I hear your point in terms of like the dignity element.
If we had a base there, then we could still patrol. To this very day, we would have a much easier time dealing with.
I don't think so. I just don't think the distance is really that fundamental for unless you're going to build.
It's not just distance. You therefore have a right to.
Port.
Yeah, I'm talking about building a naval base, like a naval base that you go back and forth and patrol the whole darn thing, because you've got a naval base at the end, and you're always sending your ships back and forth and ensuring.
Not just holding on to one rock, and that's maintaining strategic control of the entire Gulf. I don't think that was going to fly in the Sinai Accords.
You know what? And you know what? We so desperately today. You see, by the way, Greece turning towards Israel, Greece and Cyprus turning towards Israel and being like, okay, you guys help protect us from this Turkish thing. You see. Basically, the UAE, without saying it, I'm sure they're saying it behind the scenes, and even Saudi Arabia being like, Israel, you're the regional power player now. You're the local security chief. You got to push back on Iran. You got to have your subs in these waters. You got to be here. We need your presence here.
One of our subs did a surface selfie on its way through the Suez, just to like send a very clear message. Just like, hey, let's just up Periscope for a minute and say hi. We're just waving, that old Stephen Wright. Remember Stephen Wright, the comedian? It's like every once in a while I like to stick my face out the window and look up and smile for a satellite photograph, right? It's like that's exactly what they did. They were like, we're just going to stop here and wave because we know you're watching.
That's right. Very, very powerful. All right.
Let's get to the Red Sea.
Speaking of the Red Sea, we are a bunch of Red Sea pedestrians in the first place, right? We have some history with the Red Sea. Some people, by the way, say that it was called the Reed Sea, and it's just like a misspelling.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Yam Suf is literally Reed Sea. I mean, Red Sea is for sure
So can we just like go for Reed Sea, or like it's not cool?
No.
We can't just add an E. That's not going to happen.
No, you say to the average English speaker, and we cross the Reed Sea, and they say, where?
Sea of Reeds. All right. Well, that's too bad. But anyway, we are dealing with the Torah portion of the actual Exodus. This is it. Okay, we're talking about the Exodus, and we're talking about Yad Ramah, the outstretched arm, the strong arm.
The high hand.
The high hand. That's right. The waving to the satellite. We're talking about the Torah portion of Beshalach, which is a mammoth Torah portion, which starts on chapter 13, verse 17, in the book of Exodus. And I call today's show "Get on the Exodus bus," okay? And that's right. And now the first thing we learn is that the Jewish people, as they left Egypt, they left armed. Chamushim alu bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. And our sages tell us there's another way to read this, which is that only a fifth went out of Egypt, and 4/5 got left behind. And so therefore, we're saying 20% made it out of Egypt.
Yeah, I was sorry. I just hung up on the first thing. It was the first thing, but it's pretty early on. I mean, yeah. Listen, this is a pattern of Jewish history. We know this pattern. We know this pattern, and that's why I feel like the Midrash. I mean, Pshat is Chamushim, like Rashi says. Pshat is armed. Right. And he brings, I think, the proof and Unkelis, etc. And it makes sense in the context because it says that God didn't take us derech eretz plishtim along the sort of the Via Maris, the coastal road, because it would have been a battle from the word go, as opposed to a little bit of wander and eventual conquest, right? But this is a pattern in Jewish history. And the sages understood that, which is why they rightly read Hamushim as 1/5, because the reality is when the historical moment comes, most of us are not ready.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we call it a historical moment for many sense, like because people get swept into it willy nilly. Who knows? Others make a conscious choice to go with the moment. I think, as I mentioned before, I think of this all the time in the context of my grandfather, who in 1937 stowed away on a boat in Belgium, literally snuck on board, hid out with a friend to New York City. And the captain discovered him there, and they had to ransom the way off. They had family in the Lower East Side, classic story. But he got out, and his 10 brothers and sisters didn't, and countless others, obviously.
Right.
So, but everybody knew it was bad. What made him say it's not just bad; it's over?
Yeah, right? It's a type of,
and the parallel to our day is, I think, Mivukash.
Right, and you're talking, of course, about immigration to the land of Israel, choosing the land of Israel, and when there's a big war on, you're lucky if you have the sense to feel that history is turning, that this isn't just another thing, and
but by the time the war strikes, it's too late. That's my point.
Right. Well, I'm married to a Hungarian family. And Hungarians, I don't mean this in any disparaging way, because I very much appreciate, love them very much. But like their tendency doesn't necessarily jump ship. It's just, you know what I mean? They're more
the hold fast type.
They're more hold fast type. That's I'm making a giant stereotype here, but it's true.
No,
so
yeah. It's a stereotype which got legs.
But then you have some people who just have the sense like it's go time. It's time to go. And that was the other name I wanted to have for the show today, which is it's go time. And I think it behooves us right now. I just want to make a public service announcement to my fellow brothers and sisters living outside of the land of Israel. And here's the way I'm going to say it. It is obvious, and it should be obvious to you, that we invite you to live in the land of Israel. But I want to say it to you differently. If you've ever had the inclination to come and live here, if you ever thought about it, if you ever felt that feeling, think about that feeling again and ask yourself if this is the time to act upon that feeling. If you never had that feeling and you find these comments even offensive, most likely you're not even listening to the show anyway. But let's say you find these comments offensive.
Sorry, I'm willing to offend you.
Right, and it's not meant to be offensive.
No, but on some level, even if it is meant to be offensive, I feel like there's a certain life-saving element at the risk of being grandiose. Yeah. And I don't mean like there's an imminent destruction for American Jewry. I mean, this is where the future is.
Right. That's right. I'm telling you, I felt that today in a physical feeling while getting that shot with all of my, brethren and sisters there. Another man who certainly knew the flow of history and understood the times was Joseph. And Joseph, the reason I say that is because when he was in jail for 12 years and they called him to Pharaoh, he just shaved, showered, put on some new clothes, and he's ready to be number 2. Hey,
shower and put me on the stage.
Just put me in, coach. Just put me in, coach. Just give me the ball. Because winners want the ball when the game is on the line.
Yeah.
Anyway,
nice quote.
We actually see the great Joseph come back here into this Torah portion, and that is very meaningful. Oh, and Elise Gross writes, getting my paperwork together. You do that, Elise, and we can't wait to see you here in the good land. And I just want to also say Agnes says shalom from Indonesia. Shalom, Agnes. God bless you. And Edison says shalom from Indonesia. That Edison? Do you know Agnes? Are you guys friends? You guys are both in Indonesia, both watching the show and saying shalom. You guys should know one another. If I could bring you guys together here, that would be great. And Lou Weiss says, are you both preparing a Tu B'Shvat Seder? As I mentioned before, I'm doing a Tu B'Shvat Seder live on this show here tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Israel time. Rav Mike, do you do one?
And we always make sort of a brachos party out of it, so to speak. Meaning there's always fruit and a recognition of the day and the brachot. But there's something about the Tu B'Shvat Seder that has never caught my spiritual imagination.
Okay, Beseder. You have speaking of spiritual imagination, your friend.
Hey, I know that guy.
That's right. Your friend in Chavruta, Analytics Ninja, says shalom from Yerushalayim. So shalom to you as well. A great man indeed. So thank you so much for joining us today. And let's go on and just talk about Joseph for a second. I find this to be one of the most romantic of verses. It says, "Vayikach Moshe et atzmot Yosef imo," and Moses took the bones of Joseph with him. Ki hashbea hishbia, right? Because he was made. There was an oath that Joseph made the Jewish people take. At Bnei Israel, they were inoathed. They had to take the oath.
Forsworn.
Forsworn. Le'emo, saying, "Pakod yifkod Elohim etchem," when indeed God will call onto you or choose you or
God will. God
Right,
will
but
surely. It's going to happen.
right, but I think that there's an implicit when. I think there's an implicit when that shall happen. Then v'helitim
whatever.
v'helitim et atzmotai mizeh itchem, and then that's what I mean. Then you should take. Don't forget to take my bones with you.
Yeah.
From here with you. Okay, so you got to take my bones. You got to take my bones.
There's so much in this. There's so much in this. But one of the things that's been striking me this year as I read it is that this was the last oath binding them to Egypt. This was the last oath, and I think it's very important that Moshe had the presence of mind to fulfill the last thing really binding Am Yisrael to Egypt on the way out the door, so to speak. And I think it's also in terms of the comments we made earlier about Aliyah. I know for me that I attribute a lot of the success of my Aliyah, and it was not a simple process at all. This is the third iteration, to a sense that I did justice to the place where I came from.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't leave. Wasn't like boet, I didn't kick on the way out the door, and I'm not for sure one of these people not to speak down about America. I have my moments like everybody, but not like in a, God forbid, in a systematic way, right? And so therefore, I feel like I did justice to a place which did well by me. Yeah. And the reality is, for all we focus on the shi'bud, the subjugation and the slavery in Egypt, Egypt was a refuge to Yosef and Yaakov and his children in a time of real need, and was the womb that nurtured that family into a nation.
I think that's such an important comment you're making, because I come from a multicultural kind of background. My parents are Russian Jews, and to them, like, Russia, the country, was not good to them, but Russian culture was, and they take it with them. Speaking of Russian culture, I'm all fascinated by the Navalny, the saga that's happening in Russia right now. Yeah, I can't help but follow it.
I'm probably from a very distant outsider perspective, but just the courage of the man. Let's just give credit to the courage of the man. Anybody's going to publicly take on, one of the world's top dictators is not a small feat.
This guy Navalny is one of the most courageous people I've ever seen. It's like a throwback to a different time. This kind of courage. Not by the way that I'm so sure that I would want to see Putin leave the scene, because I think Putin keeps a lot of anti-Semitism at bay, frankly.
It's a country that sometimes does best under a very firm management.
Yeah.
Sorry, it just speaks like that when historically speaking, firm management.
Yeah. On the other hand, Navalny's got a point that, like, some of the Tsar-like.
It's not a free country.
What's the word I'm looking for when you kind of take too much and you splurge too much?
Just gluttonous behavior.
Yeah. Gluttony is just excessive. It's excessive. On the other hand, really, I think Putin is for Israel is good, and so in our family we take with us Russian culture in a positive way, and so too with American culture. And I see that even with French Jews, they just take the good aspects of France and themselves being, here's a weird thing about Jews. We're always not those people, but we always super are those people. As you've quoted many times on your show, Jews are like everybody else, only more so. It's like,
yeah, exactly what came up for me when you said it.
Yeah, it's like we're really Russian in some ways. We're really French. We're really American. And we bring that stuff to Israel, which is in some ways like a beautiful thing.
Well, I mean, just from an aesthetic standpoint, it's one of the things that makes our country so fantastically diverse. I mean, to say Eretz Yisrael is Olam Katan is like a given, and it's a microcosm in so many ways. But I often, when we used to ride buses all the time, Right? I would just sit there and listen sometimes. How many languages can I hear on the bus? And getting to 5 was like no problem.
Right. I think Israel is actually, there's one country that's like Israel, that's Epcot Center. That's basically it. Think about it. There's a lot of similarities to Epcot Center in Israel. Okay.
There's no controversy of putting Israel into Epcot Center, whatever. Let's not go there.
Oh, yeah. I'm not worried about it because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Just like mini Israel doesn't make sense in Israel. I never understood that. Like, why would you want to have mini Israel? Israel's already plenty mini. Okay. And what do you need that for?
Israel. Well, because it was in order to get away from greater Israel.
Now, if you would have put in a mini golf into mini Israel, then I would get it. If you
I assumed originally that's what it was.
Okay, now that's cool. I would mini golf Israel for sure.
Would you tee off from the Temple Mount? I don't think so.
And if anybody else agrees with, that's right. You put it right on top of the golden. If anybody else thinks that there should be a mini golf of Israel, contact me. Speaking of contacting me, Robert says, Shalom from Cape Town. Shalom to you, Robert. I've never been down there at Cape Town and Joburg. I haven't been down there. Would love to get down one time. So if you want to invite me down there, that'll be fun. And our mutual friend, Yoel Karen writes, back to the discussion that we had earlier, he says, our security needs evolve. Example, a demilitarized Sinai Peninsula is no longer in our interest. These islands are no longer critical to our security and commercial interests. But if they become an issue in the future, I'd rather be making a call to Riyadh than to Cairo. That I don't disagree with you. In fact, I'm quite excited. A lot of people give me a hard time because I'm a little bit more of a fan of Mohammed bin Salman, and people give me a hard time because
you like people who are willing to exercise power ruthlessly. Face it. You just do. It's okay, Yishai. It's okay. You can like those kind of people.
You know what? I'll comment directly on what you said. The answer to that is like, if you don't understand what a Saudi Arabian ruler has to do, then you don't understand Saudi Arabia, and you don't understand what they're actually doing every day over there. So then you're talking to me like as though you're talking in Vermont or something. It's like Saudi Arabia is not Vermont, okay? And Khashoggi.
Clearly,
and all
you're
that
never
stuff.
gonna get maple syrup out of that place,
right?
Anyway,
quite. Anyway, and I'm excited. He's actually building a brand new city on the Red Sea called Neom.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
$250 billion initial investment in the city. It's actually exciting. In any case, let's keep going. So the bones of Joseph are taken with him, and this is an important thing. The bones of Joseph are like a second, or at this point, a first Ark of the Covenant. Mm-hmm. They are a holy ark.
You know what I think was with bones. Them? I've said it many times, I'm sure, on the show, is I have this image that all the notes that made up Sefer Bereshit were in there. Like everything Kodesh Baruch Hu told Moshe to write down as the Sipori Avot. Who had all? Who do you think was writing down the stories of Mama and Papa? I mean, of course, Hashem could have dictated everything to Moshe, and I want to get into the whole textual question, right? And that's not my point. My point is I like the picture. Like, what was bones of Joseph weren't just a God forbid a bag of dust. This was a real Yerusha. And so, like, either literally the Cliff's Notes of Sefer Bereshit or just metaphorically in the sense that he was that connector. I think that's a precious legacy that Moshe was not going to leave behind.
Let's do a meditative moment where let's think for a second. What is the Yosef's bones that we take with us in our life? What is the things? Remember that famous short story, The Things They Carried? Remember that one about Vietnam? It's like, what is the stuff that you carry with you? It could be physical, it could be a memory, but that's like your Joseph bones. That's like my job is to take this past, take the forefathers, and then at the same time bring them home. Like I've got to park this train in its depot. I got to bring this thing to its conclusion. If you remember the movie The Terminal with Tom Hanks, where he's just trying to get that signature of the last jazz musician, so that his passed away father could fulfill that wish. And he carries this jar of these signatures of these jazz musicians. It's like, what's the thing that you carry with you that's from your forefathers and mothers? What's that thing that you carry that you want to bring it to the very end? What's that personal life mission that you have that gives you strength throughout, that you look at this thing and you're like, oh, I do know what I'm doing, what I'm here to do?
That's a fantastic question. That's a fantastic question.
Just they walked for 40 years with these bones, and they knew, like, I got to bring these bones to the place. And just to remind us, at the very end, it is Joshua, the son of Ephraim, who is going to be basically Joseph's grandson or great grandson. Great grandson, because he's the son of Nun, the son of Ephraim. That is going to be his grandson is going to be the one that brings his bones back to the land of Israel. If Joseph was in charge of kicking the Jews, helping the Jews, causing the Jews to leave the land of Israel, it's his great grandson which is going to bring the Jewish people back home. Okay.
I'm just reflecting on that. Yeah, I don't. It deserves real thought.
Yefeh. Let's go
Take
on.
me to the sea.
Yeah, let's go to the sea, and what's gonna carry us to the sea. Joseph's bones are with us, but we need a physical thing to light our way and to lead the way, and that is this pillar of smoke and fire. Pillar of smoke and fire. A cloud by day, fire by night, right?
Yeah, I love the symbolism of it. I always love the image and how the Torah is careful to say that, that they were never bereft, that they would literally, like, you could picture, like, as night began to fall, the fire would, like, come up from beneath the smoke and replace it, and then as the light would rise, the smoke would come down. There was always a guide, and having spent a fair bit of time walking in places where, if you didn't have a map, which of course they didn't, you wouldn't have any idea of where you were going.
Right.
This power of having a light on the horizon,
Mm-hmm.
I think is a very important image that is meant to be definitive from here on out. Because you could say, really, it's all downhill from here, so to speak, in terms of God's guiding hand, meaning there's a pinnacle through the Red Sea. It's like, go this way. Like, you can't miss it. You're not going to the right. You're not going to the left. There's a wall of water. The path is clear, right? So you're following this pillar of smoke through the walls of water. From there on out, though, in Jewish history, it gets harder and harder to see, right? And where that light on the horizon is and which way we're meant to be going becomes less and less certain. And so on some level, doubling down every year on internalizing this story and knowing that it's actually always there. It takes us to Sinai. Once it takes us to Sinai and we receive the Torah and then we continue that path to Eretz Yisrael, basically you always have the tools then to sort of backsight, as it were. It's like you talk about navigation in terms of, like, if you can't see exactly which way forward you're supposed to go, I can know where I am right now and look back to where I came from, and that gives me a line. And so that the image of the constant guide has always been very powerful for me as someone who's spent a lot of time wandering, frankly.
Well, one of the things that we're told to do, one of the mitzvot, is that when we pray 3 times a day, we're supposed to pray towards Jerusalem. That is where that pillar of smoke and fire lives. That's where the smoke of the sacrifices and the light of the menorah is coming from the heart of Jerusalem. And today, as that Jerusalem is reopened, reborn, re-embodied, re-enlivened, we got to turn our face to there, and we could see it. It's very clear, and that is our guiding principle today. Back to Yerushalayim, back to that center, back to that light, back to that smoke, and we're not lost like we have been to some extent for the last 2,000 years. Of course, we've been guided throughout those years as well, but now we're like it's in the clear. It's right. It's straight ahead.
Actually, I'm gonna disagree with you, because I think actually for 2,000 years, facing Jerusalem to pray was our guide. The challenges were actually here now, and so I'm thinking about the Breita that you may know from Gemara and Brachot about how, if you're outside the land of Israel, you face the land of Israel, pray. If you're inside the land of Israel, you face Jerusalem. If you're in Jerusalem, you face the Temple Mount. If you're on the Temple Mount, you face the Holy of Holies. Then it says, if you're in the Holy of Holies, which way do you face? Which is a strange question in and of itself. Right? Because there's only one person in there one time a year, although he does pray. And it says you're supposed to face that place, that space between the Kruvim. Right? And elsewhere it says you're supposed to be Mehaven Lev L'Shamayim, right? You should orient your heart to your Father in heaven. That's a much more delicate act. But how is it that we face the space between us and God? How is it that we really oriented ourselves to God? And I worry sometimes that we're in danger of stopping short at facing Jerusalem and not appreciating the task which is in our hands. Because so long as the Shekhinah is not in Yerushalayim, we're only on a path toward that proper orientation. And just now I'm really disagreeing with you. I'm just sounding a mild warning note.
That's great. That's great. We have another thing that helps us navigate sometimes, as the line from the Hunt for the Red October hounds to the hunters, in that sometimes we see a light ahead of us, but other times we see the black boot of Pharaoh or the Nazis, etc., on our tail. And that's what happened here also, that on the one hand, they're going towards freedom and towards the Torah and towards the land of Israel. On the other hand, look behind you. There's a genocidal army hot on your tail. And one of the reasons that Pharaoh reminds me of the UN is that
just limited to one of the reasons. There's many, in fact.
That's right. Well, it says here, look what it says. It's in chapter 14, verse 5, verse hey. It says, he was told that the people ran away. I mean, like, duh, right? And then
let them go.
Yeah. And then it says, "V'yafach levav paro v'avadav el ha'am." And then they're like, "Wait a minute, what do we do? How can we let them go? What about all those plagues? No worries. How can we have let them go? Mazot asinu, what have we done? Ki shilachnu et Yisrael mi'avdeinu. What have we done to release them from under our slavery?" And this is like the UN in the sense that, like, the UN voted, whatever. I'm not don't ever misunderstand that I think that in any way the UN gave birth to Israel. Like, disabuse yourself of that notion. But for those people who think that way, it's like they recognize they recognize partition, but in any case, Jewish rights in the land of Israel. And then they spend the rest of the time chasing after us to destroy us. So it's like, wait a minute, Yeah, you can't do that. Right. So it's like, and Zionism is racism? What do you mean? Like, yesterday you said that you're cool with Zionism. So what happened there? So that's like a Pharaoh type moment. And,
I can't wait to get to that episode. I got so much bubbling on that.
Oh, I'm excited about that. You're talking about the Jewish story, of course.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's okay. We got time to get there.
Okay, so and Pharaoh gives chase. It says it has the word a few different times.
He's in hot pursuit. There's no question.
He's in hot pursuit, and it's going to be a violent confrontation when they come face to face. If they indeed come to a kinetic point.
And this is a worthwhile place, by the way, to raise that always problematic issue that this is the last time. It says "V'yichazek Hashem et leiv Paro melech Mitzrayim yirdof achrei bnei Yisrael," and God made sure, He strengthened His heart in order to make sure that He chased Am Yisrael. And I really took to heart your shot, which you couldn't remember, which your friend said it, that we spoke about last week, in the sense that God had to harden His heart. Or maybe it was the Sforno you said it was.
Yeah, it was Rabbi Ari Abramowitz quoting the Sforno. And then my good friend Ari Silverman sent me more on that. So
so I think that it's a beautiful shot. Nonetheless, here I feel like we almost are called. There's something else called for, which is I think a recognition that there comes a point of no return, and the Rambam gets into this. There comes a point of no return. To think that a person always has free will and can always simply stop and say, you know what, that's a bad idea, is to fail to appreciate that our actions have consequences which extend beyond the immediate. And that for Paro to reverse course right now would actually not be justice. To Paro even have the choice to reverse course right now would, or the other way to read it is, and when it says, "V'yichazek Hashem et leiv Paro," it just means this is the way God made the world. Like God made the world in a way that if Paro's gone this far, there's only one destination, and that's the bottom of the sea.
Right, but before the bottom of the sea, you're right. But let's just take one step beforehand, and remember that you're at the edge of the sea. The Jewish people are at the edge of the sea, and things look kind of bleak. We're in a tight spot.
It's a classic rock hard place, hammer
or a wet place, right? Right between Pharaoh's arrows and his fighters. And his chariots coming down, and his blades coming down on you, and behind you is the very, very deep Red Sea. Right, the Reed Sea. It is. If you've ever swam the Reed Sea, if you swim it just a little bit off the shore,
the blue hole.
it's like a kilometer drop off, and it is just scary. And they actually, in Prince of Egypt, they do it fairly, that they show what a big drop off people had to kind of climb down in order to get to the bottom of the sea. And we're really in a this is the genocidal situation. This is the, Jewish people, getting shot in the back of the head type of moment, where like you can't, you're just totally stuck, and you don't know what to do. And at this darkest moment of the Jewish experience, in this moment where they're coming out of slavery that has broken them, with a little bit of a ray of hope, but then the truth comes, the power comes back to quash the truth. Here it is, and at that very moment, a small little light comes out, and it's called Jewish humor. Right? We talk about this every year.
Yeah,
but we can't stop.
I actually quoted you on this the other day. Somebody loved it. I forget where I said it to.
It's like at this bottom of the moment. This is like near death experience. They just say to him, "Hey Moses, what? There weren't any graves in Egypt, though. We could have just died there. You need to take us out of there.
Walk for 3 days to die.
Thanks a lot. There's plenty of graves in Egypt, let me tell you. All right, and that's exactly what the Torah says. Verse 11. Vayomru el Moshe. They said to Moses, "Hami bli ein kvarim b'Mitzrayim." Are there no graves in Egypt? And the biting irony, humor, cynicism. Irony is the right word here. The biting irony is just, to me, it is. On the one hand, you could be annoyed by it. Right? That's like the straight way to read it, is to be annoyed by it. But if you just kind of took a little glimmer in your eye, put a little smile on your face, you can read it as like, this is like dark Jewish humor. You know what I mean? What? There were no graves in Egypt. You couldn't just keep us there.
Left us all the way out here just to die.
Right. Oh, you take us out here to die, right, in the desert. So what have you done to us? To take us out of Egypt. And he keeps going, like, didn't we tell you, leave us alone? I told you to leave me alone. I don't want to go. I didn't want to go. Okay? It's like Billy Crystal. It's like Billy Crystal par excellence. It's mamash Billy Crystal. Ki tov lanu avodat Mitzrayim. It would have been better to serve them. Egypt. Mimutenu b'midbar. And then...
Taste the soup. Taste the soup.
Exactly. Ooh, look how much you know. Huh? Right? And Moshe answers, "Vayomer Moshe la'am, al tira'u." Don't be afraid. Hityatzvu. Stand straight. Stand up straight. Or another way of saying it is, man up. Re'u et Yeshuat Hashem. Now see the salvation. What's that?
Get a grip.
Get a grip. That's right. Re'u et Yeshuat Hashem. See the salvation of the Lord. I'm feeling Charlton Heston-y. Asher yaseh lechem hayom, that he's going to do the salvation of the Lord, which he will do for thee today. Ki asher ra'item et Mitzrayim hayom, as you see Egypt today, lo tosifon lirotam od ad olam. You'll never see, they'll never again appear in this way. You're going to see something that has never been seen. And then the famous line, Hashem yilachem lechem, God will fight for you. Vatem tacharishun, and you will be silent. You will be quiet. Zip it, okay? Because right, I
think you get to the pathos of that moment, so you feel Moshe like, ooh, 40 years in the wilderness is not going to end well. If his last line was, and zip it.
That's right, and zip it. Okay, I'm going to fight for you.
I mean, listen, joking aside, there's something very important to me in here. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Though.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
There's a very important intersection between Yirah and Yireh that we know well. Right, in seeing and fearing. Like you look at the line that you just read, is that the people. It literally says that they lift up their eyes and they saw Egypt chasing them. And it says, "V'yomer Moshe la'am al tira'u." Don't be afraid. Tira'u. Hitasuv u'ra'u. Stand here and see. Mm-hmm. Wait, it's like almost the same word, right? If you hear it in the Hebrew, right? What God's going to do. Ki asher ra'item et Mitzrayim hayom, and when you're going to see Mitzrayim today, you'll never see them like this again. And then pretty soon, what we're going to have is V'yoram et Hashem u'Moshe avdo, right? God feared. They saw the Egyptians dead, and they feared Moshe and God. Now, this relationship between seeing and fear, or standing in awe, as it were, could be both, really, is an old relationship in our story. It began back in the Garden of Eden. The first appearance of Yirah is when Adam hides because their eyes are opened up by eating from the tree, and they see that they're naked. And then we have, of course, Avraham Avinu, the whole interplay between Yireh and the binding of Isaac, right? That he ends up saying that the mountain is called Hashem Yireh, right? That it's where God will see and will be seen, and yet it's all about the fear of God, right? But here we have a national experience of this powerful intersection between, we say seeing is believing in English. Well, seeing is believing. It goes back to your point about truth, right? And one of the challenges that social media presents to the internalized standards we have of truth, no matter how skeptical, cynical, and world wise we are, most people who see something happening in a video, so what's that video? And it's like, it's real, right? But this is much deeper than that, because it's what you see, how your experience shapes your frame of reference going forward, what you even consider to look at. And what Moshe is saying to them is that, you need to take a look again. Because the way you see Egypt now, in your scared self, that you think they're all powerful and chasing you, you'll never see them that way anymore. Which is why the Mechilta actually sees this as one of the sources for the mitzvah never to go back to Egypt. Mm-hmm. Which is a very interesting source. Why? And Moshe says, he reads it as Kasher Rayitem et Mitzrayim Hayom. You see, just like you see Egypt today, Lo Tosifu Rotam Od Olam. It's not a comment, you'll never see them again. It's a command. Don't ever look at them that way again. Mm-hmm. Never look to them for power. Never go to them for horses. Don't go back to Egypt, right? Why? Because I'm about to show you how false their power really is. And you'll learn to fear me. This is one of the most important moments in human history, I would go as far as today, certainly in our history. Which is that's why, by the way, all our liberal progressive brothers and sisters are wearing those T-shirts that say "Standing Up to Tyrants Since Paro." Now, whether you think that former President Trump belongs in that category of tyrants or not is not something I want to get into right now. My point is
sometimes we replace tyrants with worse tyrants,
or at least more subtle ones. The point is that there's something deep within the identity of what it is to be a Jew to understand that there's really only one thing you're supposed to fear, and that causes you to see the world in a different way. That's my point. And this is the moment where they went from seeing to fearing as opposed from fearing to seeing. You understand? Right, they saw. It was the whole logical mind. Like I said, dude, Moshe, ocean, Egyptians, we really had to walk all the way out here to die. We could have just died back then. Moshe says, you don't see. You're about to see something which will change the way you look at the world forever.
Right.
And that's awesome.
And we had, I think, that moment in the 6 Day War. I think I think probably the 6 Day War, which is this moment of despair that something was like, now watch this.
Yes.
Now watch this. And that's what happened. It went exactly the opposite way. I personally believe that the 6 Day War is the greatest revelation since the splitting of the Red Sea. And it's on that level.
And we could go awfully far with that, just pointing out that the challenge is, of course, then how one sees the world in light of it. And as we've spoken about many times, the 6 Day War versus 1973. And how do you actually put the two together into a coherent story? And therefore, what world do you see when you look out?
Right.
And it's very divided amongst Am Yisrael in terms
That's
of
right.
how
That's right. The Yom Kippur War is the war of the left. You have to be a realist. You live in a world. You're not the superpower of the skies. And,
notice it's welded to a need then to reinterpret 67.
Right, as in hubris,
conquest, and intoxicating pride. And,
right.
They work together.
Right. Yeah. And the other read is, no, God revealed himself. We won our land back. And the Yom Kippur War was, instead of recognizing God back then when he gave us this thing, we did have hubris, but that was the secular impulse.
Right.
Right. And this was the retort to that. And still God let us win. Let's not make that mistake again. Right. Anyway. Speaking of history, I think also that we have here what I understand is one of the first examples of representative democracy. What do I mean? We have in verse...
They stood around and argued and did nothing, and somebody strong just led the way?
Maybe. Check this out. Here's my explanation of representative democracy. Verse 14, we said, God said that Moses told the Jewish people, be quiet, God is going to fight for you, and you have to be silent. The next verse is... Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, ma titzak elai? Why are you screaming to me? Deber bnei Yisrael v'Yisrael. Let the Jewish people talk to the Jewish people and let them go. But what do I see happening here? He told the Jewish people, silence! And then he took their scream and their concern and brought it up to God. And God's like, you see what I'm saying? He took the agency from them. He's like, you guys be quiet. Let me do the talking. He talks to God and he's, hey, what's going on here? We're going to die. And then God says to him,
what are you shouting at me for?
Yeah, what are you shouting at me for? Get moving. Get moving. Don't you know that this is the moment? Yeah. Don't you know that this is the moment to go? And Rabbi Tendler, I say this every year, my Rebbe in the United States, my brother's Rebbe as well, Rabbi Moshe David Tendler, God bless him for continued health. He's in his 90s. Amen. He told us about this verse. He said, what does this mean? What does it mean? Why do you cry to me? Tell the Jewish people to go. What does that mean? This is a tough moment, so it's time to pray. And Rabbi Tendler says that God said to him, Moses, don't you know that you have the most powerful force in the world at your disposal, which is the unity of the Jewish people? You have the Jewish people together. All you have to do is march, and it's just going to split the sea or anything else in its path. And on a deeper level, I also want to add, just to touch it for a second, but an important point of Jewish unity. There's a medrash that says, we all know the medrash that Nachshon ben Aminadav, he jumped into the water, and he's from the tribe of Judah. There's another medrash that says that nothing would split the sea until the bones of Joseph were brought forward. Mm-hmm. And if you take those two midrashim together, you realize that actually what this represents is the two kingdoms of Israel. The Messiah that comes from the Davidic line and the Messiah that comes from the Joseph line. And Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, when they lock in together into cooperation, nothing can stop them. Nothing can stop this force. This same force was the thing that really entered the land of Israel with the 12 spies. The other spies became weak, but two spies, one from the house of Joseph, which is Joshua from the tribe of Ephraim, and one was Kalev ben Yefuneh. When these two forces, the Davidic force and the Joseph force, come together, they're just able to barrel through all the things, all the fears, and all of the impossible situations that they can open it up. So the depth of Jewish unity, not just everybody being like, I like you, but rather right. these two kingdoms, these two forces amongst the Jewish people come together. Just by parentheses between me and you, Rav Mike, I've been reading again the book of Samuel 2, or 2 Samuel. One of the main themes in the whole book of Samuel 1 and 2 is how can we bring the force of Saul and the force of David together? Is it through a wife? Is it through a best friend? Is it through an army general? Like, what can I get? How can we come together, for God's sakes? And that's the great challenge.
I mean, unfortunately, one could draw the conclusion from Shmuel that the answer is you can't. That at least at this stage of history, the two are sequential and not synchronous.
Right.
And that the vision that Yechezkel offers to keep going with the sort of full extension of the holding together the rods of Judah and the rods of Yosef and a reunification on, for lack of a better term, a structural level, a reintegration is really an end game process, and I really see that, you look at what's happening in our streets today between, let's say, the Yehudim and the Israelim, right? Without necessarily throwing labels around, but there's a tension between Yehudim and the Israelim in our society, which is expressive of real rifts and differences and substantive, not just cultural ones. And it's my fervent hope that we can put those pieces together into a redemptive force.
Amen. I personally, just on the side of Jews or Israelis, Yehudim or Israelim, I personally, in terms of the lingo there, I've never agreed with that public discourse lingo, and I've always preferred the Rabbi Nachman approach, which is the Jewish person is called an Ish Israeli. Like, that is the highest level of a Jewish person, or Ish or Isha Israeli.
Fine, but you understand what I mean in the common usage.
All right, very good. We'll have to discuss that at a later time because we're starting to go over an hour here, and we have to get through just a few more things, really two more things.
We've got to get through the sea.
Yeah, we got to get through the sea. That's right, we got to get through the sea. And indeed, the Jewish people go through the sea, and v'hamayim lahem chomam yiminam u'mismolam, the walls, the water is for them as walls from the right and from the left. In other places, it's like explained like a frozen wall. And still between these walls, the Amud Esh and Anan, the pillar of smoke and fire, maybe they've become kind of unified as a pillar of smoke and fire, are guiding the Jewish people through it. Moses will release the waters back onto the Egyptians who are giving chase, and that's right. And it's like it's a big flush. That's what happened there. You know what I mean? It's a royal flush. Maybe I should call it. You think you like that royal flush? You like that because of the the royal flush and
I was going to actually ignore it, to be honest.
You're probably right too. In any case, and then we have the famous Song of the Sea, because when you come out of this kind of experience, it's hard to say. You either use an onomatopoeia like wow, or you go like Bill and Ted, you go dude, or you are a little bit more intelligent than articulate, and you give Moses's Az Yashir. And I want to just use one commentary that our mutual friend Zev sent to me from Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. It says in the Song of the Sea, it says, I will glorify him. I will dedicate myself to being a place and a home for him, God. My entire existence in life is a temple for God's glorification and exaltation. My whole purpose is to act as a conduit for revelation of divine presence in this world. And then the next line, my Father is God, I will exalt him. God has maintained the covenant established with the ancestors. This good faith is what characterized God for my fathers, and this is how they described him to me. However, I will praise him even higher to publicize awareness of God and his authority throughout the world. This, then, is the mission thrust upon each subsequent generation of Israel, to carry the message of God's existence, to extol him to the nations, and to elevate step by step the Creator's standing amongst mankind.
I mean, it's a commentary on this line, Ze Levi Anvehu, Eloi Aviv Romamenu, right? This is my God, the Anvehu. It's so powerful because we read it as Rav Hirsch said, alternatively as praise, but Anvehu, I will give him place. Right? As in Lashon Vei, right? And there's a tremendous power that song represents in the biblical narrative for sure, and certainly in the rabbinic mind, that song is right response to the miraculous. So much so, it's not just right response, it's a necessary response. The Midrash says that God wanted to make Hezekiah the Messiah and Sennacherib's army Gog and Magog, the last battle, but Hezekiah didn't sing a praise after he was saved. Right, and this is the archetype, that there's some element of the redemptive which doesn't happen in this moment if Moshe and Bnei Israel don't sing this song. There's something lacking in the redemption, and so there's a wholeness. Well, this is when I'm focused. One of my favorite moments of the morning davening is that the Mishnah Berurah brings the Zohar, which when he brings the Zohar, you should be paying attention, right? It's not a systematic approach. That says that anyone who says the Song of the Sea in the morning and feels the joy of having been saved in Mitzrayim, all their sins are forgiven. Mochlin lo kol avonotav.
Wow!
Right, which is a crazy and fantastic statement. That why, like my kasha, why on earth would saying the Song of the Sea with a sense of joy? What does that have to do with my sins? And it's such a powerful invitation to recognize the essential nature of consciousness, that if you can touch that place of real joy, that salvation is real. I know it's real because I was there. And out of the space of sin and narrowness, and it just really puts you back in touch with the reality of God.
Beautiful. I will now translate what you're saying into homework for all of our listeners. We invite you to say the Song of the Sea one time this week, and then send me a hashtag, I said the Song of the Sea. I said the Song of the Sea. Hashtag I said the Song of the Sea. Send it to Yishai, YishaiFleischer.com or Yishai@thelandofisrael.com.
And I'm going to give you the advanced homework. Wait. And if you say it anyway, every morning, push yourself to try and feel the joy, just a little bit of it, of what it was actually like to be saved.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you don't read the Hebrew, print it out in English. I'm inviting Jews and Gentiles to do this, just to get out there and say the Song of the Sea with gusto. All right, it's Gusto Week.
It is definitely. This is big. This is the
Disgusting.
big time.
That's right. Two more topics that we have to touch, and there's so much more to say about the Song of the Sea. So much more to say, especially that it really ends with the end of the Song of the Sea is really the call to rebuild. That was an anachronism.
And at that point,
It's not. It's the Song of the Sea ends with both. We remember that the women sang the Song of the Sea. There was a women's minyan, a women's choir, a women's
ladies, give it up.
Yeah, that's right. And then they're like, oh, look what we got right here. We got the tambourines.
Because they were the ones that actually believed they were going to be saved.
Right. They take out the tambourines.
The men were thinking I should have brought more food. The women were like, get the tambourines.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Lady, we could have put more gold there. She said, I need the tambourine, and I'm not leaving Egypt without it. And
or
I
the
can't live
timbrels,
without
or
it.
however we want to call them.
It's my industrial-sized tambourine, and I can't live without it. Okay, where's that from? In any case, that was somebody will write to me what that's from.
Yeah, don't tell me.
I'll tell you after the show. Let's just say the original had the word hairdryer instead of tambourine, okay? It's my industrial-sized tambourine. Okay, the next thing, we have just two more topics to talk about. I want to talk about one quickly and one a little bit more in depth. So we got to focus here, and that is the manna. The manna. This is the big Torah portion of the manna bread, the man that comes from heaven, the heavenly food. That's this Torah portion. What's that?
Heavenly eats.
Heavenly eats. Yeah, heavenly eats. Which is like, on the one hand, the Jewish people are reduced to a prenatal, not prenatal. What do you call it? In utero. We're moving into in utero. You know. Ooh. Yeah, we're moving into its exodus. You're a nation, but we're also like babies, in the sense that God is like feeding us like through what's it called?
Connection.
Yeah.
There's
an umbilical cord. There's an umbilical cord, and it's a direct feeding. You're not going to work for your food. It's back to the Garden of Eden. It's back to being fed. It's being grown as a nation. It's
surrounded by the clouds of glory and protected on all sides. Yeah.
Right, and you're in the desert. Right. So on the one hand, the manna bread is this amazing thing, and when we taste it in real life, like as I said last week, that last week fell a hail here in Judea, and we picked it up in our house, and we had everybody eat it, and you could really taste the manna. You really could taste it, and Rabbi Nachman talks about like just plain bread and water being something that you could taste anything in if you just kind of concentrate on manna type feelings, but at the same time, it's also a as you would call it, a lack of agency. It's like you're no longer the person who produces it. You kind of get it right now until you get to the land of Israel. When you get to the land of Israel, manna will be coming from sweat and toil of the earth, and that will raise up manna in a way of regular nature or perceived regular nature. But this is different. So, but on the other hand, our rabbis and all the kind of mystics types say, if you want like welfare, read the lines about the manna bread. Read that out loud every day, and there's a blessing for godly sustenance through it.
Yeah, it always strikes me that later in the book of Devarim, in Deuteronomy, when Moshe is kind of retelling all these episodes, describes the manna that its purpose was inui. It was la'anotchem, right? To test or even to bring you a little bit of suffering in the sense of dependency. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a very important lesson of life, which our whole modern selves have struggled against, right? That side of agency and autonomy and capability. And we haven't spoken about the COVID crisis in some time. So just to bring us back into that context, that one, I think the most difficult elements of COVID has been the sense that all the systems that gave us a sense of security and that there's a long term that can be relied upon were shown to be, if not completely illusory, then at the very least not as reliable as we had hoped. And that element of uncertainty and tlut, right? Tlut, dependency is not even quite strong enough. Just like a contingency of existence, that our existence is contingent, not definitive. That, I think, is what the man was supposed to introduce us to. And just as an aside, the Maharalmi Prague says that is actually the definition of Yirat Shamayim, to understand that your existence is contingent. And on some level, it's the purpose for which humanity was created. Because we can be conscious of our contingent nature. That's why we can choose. Kol bidei shamayim chutz mi yirat shamayim. Everything's in the hands of heaven except choosing to fear God, choosing to hold that sense that, I don't define the world. And the man was there to train us to that. So its sweetness is obvious because God does. But its bitterness or the fear that goes with it of knowing you have today but not necessarily for tomorrow is very real.
Speaking of mana, I got to show you something that came down in front of our door, but it'll take me 10 seconds to get it, so you're going to have to fill air for a second, Rav Mike.
I'm filling air for a second. That was a little bit of an unexpected invitation, but it's always a pleasure. And maybe I should talk about Yishai when he's not here. Oh, too late.
Okay.
You'll never know what I said, will you?
I don't know. I'll have to watch the rerun.
And listen to the recording.
Okay. This is what came in our front door. It says it's chocolate. Okay, it's chocolate, and it says "Ihye beseger," which is a play.
Where?
Our town sent this to us in front of our door. He put it out.
You live in a much cooler town than I do.
When it comes to this stuff, it's a very cool town, and it says "Ihye beseger," which is like a play on the Hebrew word "Ihye beseder," which is everything is going to be okay. But the Daled is kind of replacing the Gimel, and the Gimel is replacing the Daled, and it's "Ihye beseger." It'll be okay in the quarantine, in the closure period, lockdown. So here's a chocolate. And inside it's the
seem to be going anywhere right now.
Yeah, we are locked down. Not only that, but our skies are closed. Our skies are closed.
Yeah, they shut the gates again, huh?
They shut, but no, not like before. This is really shut. You can't even fly in. That's it. You're done. Right. It's like Israel is closed for business, for the outsiders. By the way, speaking of mana, I just want to remember our good friend Chaim, who makes awesome pickles called Prohibition Pickle. Okay,
yeah, we're hoping he's going to make it out to Mali to me this week. Chaim, if you're listening, make it happen, man.
That's right. And
hey,
if, let's say
if you're listening and you want to help make it happen, you can send gifts of pickles, herring, happen to love, also smoked whitefish. Think about it. You could help a small businessman here in the land of Israel and make my Shabbos.
That's right. By just tricking out your kiddush and going to Prohibition Pickle on Facebook or on Instagram and ordering something for yourself if you're in the land of Israel, or for somebody you love in the land of Israel, from your rabbi, your rebbitzin, your uncle, your aunt, your sister, your brother, your kids, or of course your favorite show host. So check out Prohibition Pickle. They make our Shabbos awesome. So
amen.
And I'm totally out of the hot sauce. I'm totally out. So I needed very
bad. I went through that so quickly. Did you try the grill mix? The grill mix is fantastic.
I have not tried the grill mix, nor have I had the Gehenim. I haven't had the super hot stuff, so I want the hot stuff.
Okay. Well, I mean, super hot, So.
Prohibition Pickle, friends. Prohibition Pickle, check it out. That's the mana for the week. Let's get to the last topic, Rav Mike.
All right, I got to wrap it up. Do it.
You got to wrap it up. And
anybody who's still listening right now deserves a reward.
That's right. And we just have really one more topic to talk about, and that's the topic of, if I can ask my delightful daughter to open some of that window, that would be wonderful. The last topic is the topic of Amalek.
Amalek. Knew it was.
Yeah.
Right there at the end.
When things are too good, when things are too good, comes in Amalek, and he loves to spoil it. He loves to cool it off. He loves to cool off the excitement and the energy of the Jewish people. And he is... he's the revelation buster. He's the good energy buster. Sometimes, like some of the Arab Knesset members, whenever there's like a Zionistic fervor building up in the Knesset, they jump up and start to yell and call Israel a racist state, all kinds of stuff like that. They're just the needle in the balloon is the Amalek energy.
They are definitely the ultimate burster of bubbles.
Yes, but they're professionals at that. They're burster of bubbles, because that is what Amalek does. The Amalek thing is to fight in a dark moment, in a moment of light, to bring darkness in a moment of light. It's a kind of, I would call it a kind of like a zelu madze bar elokim, like it's the antithesis energy. I call it it's like the bizarro energy, Well,
that's why later Bilam will call them Reshit Goyim. Amalek Reshit Goyim, that they're the the first amongst nations, sort of an appellation which also applies to Israel, in the sense that they represent an alternative universe. They represent an alternative path. But I think it's so important in light of what you're saying, this bubble bursting, downer, evil guys, right, exists right here between crossing the Red Sea and standing at Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
And for many, many reasons. But I think the most practical we can take from it is, in the end of the day, it didn't matter. We still left Egypt and we still stood at Sinai.
Right.
Meaning, it's important to remember that if someone stains your revelation or rains on your parade, or I don't know, like harshes your mellow, or however you want to put it, that it doesn't fundamentally uproot the truth which was carrying you out of Egypt.
Right.
And which you're going to hear at Sinai. Don't make that mistake, because sometimes we give Amalek more power than they deserve.
Right. That's a great point. That's a great point. Don't let people don't let things, and especially if you're filling out your paperwork for Aliyah, like, don't be surprised. The Amalek energy wants to stop you. It wants to stop that process from moving forward. You will
your
face
first year when you discover how hard it is to actually live here. Don't
That's
be
right.
surprised either. You came for good reasons and you have a bright future.
Right.
It may be a process.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to focus on one thing this year. I just want to focus on the last two words in the Torah portion, midor dor. That it says, Vayomer. It is said, either Moses said or God said, or it is said, ki yad al kes yad. There's a hand upon the throat of God. Is it that God's hand is raised in an oath, or is there some force trying to, as it were, knock God off its throne? It's a totally different read of this verse, but it doesn't matter. Both are.
You can pull them both off.
You can pull them both off. Well, one is trying to pull God off, and one is God saying, "I have an eternal kind of war with milchama leHashem." There's a war onto God with Amalek from generation to generation. Here's an interesting thought, Rav Mike. This term, midor dor, is only found in one other place, which was a few Torah portions ago, when God says about himself that when he says, Zeshmi lo'olam v'zezichri ledor do. Here's midor do, and therefore the other one is ledor do, which is this one says from generation to generation, but there it says that my name, God, which is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, is my name for eternity, and my Zeshmi lo'olam zichri, and this is my memory.
Translation there,
right?
Okay, memory.
This is how I'm to be remembered or said. From generation to generation. To me, it's obvious that there's a tension between the Amalek energy, that some people explain that Amalek comes from the word melika, that they want to cut the head off the body and detach you from that consciousness and that mind of the forefathers and mothers. The antithesis is a connection to the forefathers and mothers. That's the antithesis to the Amalekite strength in this world, and the antithesis to the connection to the forefathers and mothers is the force of Amalek that wants to detach you.
So I want to add something that's a beautiful tension you're bringing out, is that there's kind of two ways to relate to an intergenerational process. One can see it as a failure. I mean, listen, if this was a truth, then it should have just happened. Why is this taking so long? Why is it so difficult? Even if I'm failing forward, which is a precious phrase in my eyes, nonetheless, it's still failure. Right, so that's where Amalek begins to erode one's ability to really succeed in the motivation. The other way to look at it is that the generational process is a value unto itself. That failure is not an accident, and it's not even really a failure. It's a critical element of growth. Now, you know what lies between the two of them? Because it's true, midol dol only exists twice, but it's reminiscent to the ear of kotz v'dardar. Right, that right after Adam eats from the tree of knowledge, God says to him, "You blew it, man. Right, that you're gonna have to eat by the sweat of your brow, and you're gonna work the earth, and it's gonna be motzi kotz v'dalda. It's gonna bring out thorns and thistles." What's the connection? So my Rebbe, Rav Daniel Cohn, the Rabbi Yishai Bat Ayin, always used to teach us about Amalek, is that kotz v'dalda, Adam was cursed with a sense of dissipation. That much of the energy he was going to put into the things he needed was going to go nowhere. It was going to sprout into thistles, and like 5% he'd get what he needed, as opposed to in Aden, where it's a shtaim alu l'mita shlosha yaldu, right? The processes produce their product without effort. Now, here's the thing. This is the story of Am Yisrael in human history. Do processes get you down with a sense of dissipation? Is the thing that prevents you from doing the things you want to do is a knowledge that a lot of the energy you expend won't actually go where you want it to go? If that's the case, I'm like, sorry, gotcha. But if you understand that there's no such thing as uselessly spent energy, that the effort is its own value, even if it dissipates off, right? But that discipline, the focus, the clarification of the value and importance, etc., that itself is a merit. You transform Amalek into a tool for redemption itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so this piece you're pointing out here is incredibly important in my eyes.
Well, it's an amazing Torah portion that takes us through the fear of being annihilated, to the glory of the splitting of the Red Sea, the Reed Sea, to the Song of the Sea, which, as you explained, Rav Mike Feuer, is really part of the redemptive process itself, or else it's not a full redemption if we don't sing that song. We went from that to Mana, which has also both sides. On the one hand, a redemptive, getting it straight from God, but on the other hand, there's a test in that. And we went from that to the dual nature of Amalek, which on the one hand is a hindrance, a balloon popping needle, a force of darkness in this world, a bizarro anti-Israel force.
Spiritual buzzkill.
Spiritual buzzkill. I like that a lot. Spiritual buzzkillers. I like that a lot. And on the other hand, as you just explained, a way for us to understand that there's a process involved, and to be part of that process, and to see that the whole process until redemption is also holy. It's really the way God wanted it in this world, through these efforts and through the fight, through the struggle for Israel, is how you reach the miracle of Israel. Rav Mike Feuer, thank you so much for joining me for this awesome hour and a half long schmooze on Beshalach. We don't usually have this amount of time, but it worked out today, and this was the Torah portion to do it. So Rav Mike Feuer, I want people to check out your other websites at jewishstory.co and ravmike.com.
Yeah, great.
Check out your other show. Check out your other work also as, I always forget the other word, spiritual counseling. It came to me, which people can avail themselves of. That's really great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Yishai Fleisher Show.
It's my pleasure. Shabbat Shalom.
All right, Rav Mike, thanks again, and Shabbat Shalom, and awesome to have you with us. And thank you for being with me here on the Yishai Fleisher Show. We have a lot of great sponsors of the show. I think you know who they are. They're the good folks at Prohibition Pickle that we talked about before. They're also at Blessed by Israel. You could buy products from the land of Israel by going to Blessed by Israel, and they'll ship to you. If the skies are closed, Blessed by Israel is still open, so check that out. Check out our good friends at our two creams. We've got Beard Balm, awesome masculinity beard balm but Hebrew masculinity. It ain't toxic. It's organic. It's organic Hebrew masculinity at olivemale.com. Check out their balms, but asterisk, first grow a beard. Or use it in your hair. Truthfully, it's also great in the hair. Smells great, makes you feel good. Your significant other will appreciate it. So check that out. Or maybe you're looking for a prospective significant other. This shall help. That's olivemale.com. Give him coupon code Yishai10. Get 10% off. Blessed by Israel. Also, Yishai, get 12% off. Our good friends at Jerusalem Salves. How can you not want a Jerusalem salve? I want a Jerusalem salve right now. It will solve all your problems. If you just go to JerusalemSalve.com, also coupon code Yishai, get some soul glow. You'll be a different person for it. It's going to be awesome. And the Jewish community of Hebron, we protect the forefathers and mothers and keep an awesome community there in a tight spot and make it stronger and stronger, and thereby keeping the place open for the rest of us. That's hebronfund.org. And Tchelet, right? If you want to be a biblical blue Jew, the blue is back. And so go to Tchelet, Tekhelet, coupon code Yishai will get you 5% off of an awesome mitzvah. So who doesn't want that? Of course, I want you to check out our donate page, our support Yishai and the Strengthening of Israel page. At YishaiFleisher.com makes all of the difference in the world. And we also have lots of other ways to support today. Venmo, Cash App, Google Pay, and we're having our Patreon upsite soon. And also we have a Google Smiles for Kuma. I'll get you the link for that soon. I'll get it for you on the next show. So we're working hard to make it easy for you to support and be part of, not even support, for you to make Israel stronger. That's what this is about. With that, I want to thank everybody, especially Moshe Herman, Tabitha, Ben Bresky, Malka Fleischer for helping me so much, Josh Fleischer for helping me with the setup for audio video, and also, who else did I want to thank this week? The Land of Israel Network and all our other great shows here, the Land of Israel Network. Check it out, including Josh Haston and Arya Bromwitz and Jeremy Gimpel. Great stuff. Check out the Fellowship, the Land of Israel Fellowship makes awesome Sunday programming that will, if you ever felt the need to go to church, if you're of that persuasion, believe me that the Fellowship will will fulfill all of your spiritual needs. So check out our shows and all of our products. Check out YishaiFleischer.com for my articles, including and articles and events, including tonight. I'll be debating and discussing really more with Knesset member Michal Cutler-Wunsch. We'll be talking about the future of the Middle East and Israel in the Middle East. And especially the issues of Judea and Samaria. We'll be talking about that today with Knesset member Michal Cutler-Wunsch. And then tomorrow, live right here, we'll be doing a Tu B'Shvat Seder with fruits and wine, and you'll be able to join us live. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's just going to be me and Malka and you and the fruits. So thank you very much to all of our sponsors, all of our friends, and especially thank you to Hashem, to God Almighty, the God of Israel, whose abode is Yerushalayim, and who gives us the great privilege and strength to broadcast His word as best as we can. He gives us the opportunity to talk about His Torah, His world, and His vision for what this world is supposed to be. God bless you. Looking forward to hearing from you, and lots of blessings from the land of blessings. And Alice says, Shalom from Baltimore, and she adds, Lehitraot Bakarov, see you soon. And Fred Bettman says, Shabbat Shalom. And Anna says, thank you very much for great learning. And Benji Zion says, praying for a 24-hour live stream. That's a good prayer. But remember that God is broadcasting 24/7. All we have to do is tune in. God bless you and blessings from the land of blessings. And Shalom.